Bueno, muy buenos días a todas las personas que empiezan a unirse a nuestra sesión informativa. Mucho gusto para todos. Mi nombre es Karen Martínez, parte del equipo de Consejería Académica y Relaciones Internacionales de Colfuturo. Y el día de hoy nos encontramos con Hertie School de Alemania. Les explicaré un poquito el formato del presente webinar como para que tengamos un contexto general. Entonces, en la primera parte tenemos a Kai Wegrich. Él estará realizando una masterclass titulada Why Public Policy Matters, Studying in Germany and the Hertie School. Y adicionalmente nos acompaña también Ana Pérez. Ella es representante de esta institución académica y nos va a hablar de una gran variedad de temas relacionados con opciones de financiación, oferta académica, hospedaje, becas, ayudas, apoyos adicionales y bueno, todos los temas que realmente ya considere que les sean de utilidad para todos aquellos que estén planeando llevar a cabo un posgrado en Alemania, en el exterior en general, con Colfuturo o sin él. Adicionalmente, Ana también de pronto más adelante nos va a ampliar más la información sobre el convenio que tiene Hertie con Colfuturo, que grosso modo les cuento se caracteriza por ofrecer una beca del 100% que va a cubrir totalmente los costos de matrícula para un estudiante y becas parciales que cubrirán el 50% de la matrícula para dos estudiantes, 35% de la matrícula para tres y 25% para un máximo de cuatro estudiantes. Entonces, como pueden ver, esta universidad nos ofrece una gran cantidad y variedad de beneficios y de apoyos. La idea es que ustedes puedan atender a toda la información que nos suministren el día de hoy los representantes y puedan hacer todas las preguntas, todas las dudas e inquietudes que tengan, las dejen en el Q&A para poderlas ir resolviendo a lo largo de la sesión. Entonces, para no hacer más espacio a esto, Ana, Kai, thank you so much for being here today with us. We are so happy to have you here. You can go ahead.
So maybe I'll just briefly begin by saying hi to everyone. Hola a todos. Vamos a comenzar primero con la presentación del profesor Kai en inglés y luego pues yo me voy a dirigir a ustedes en español. Pero bueno, igual un gran saludo de nuestra parte. Estamos muy felices de tenerles aquí hoy y bueno, muy emocionados de contar también con la participación del profesor Kai Begrich, quien es un pilar muy importante de nuestra institución. Y pues le doy también la bienvenida a él y los dejo en muy buenas manos por los siguientes minutos para charlar sobre pues la importancia de las políticas públicas. So you can go ahead, Kai.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Karen. And thank you all for showing up online here to this meeting in the morning for you, right? For us, it's the late afternoon. Sorry that I speak in English. I tried to learn Spanish at some point. I speak better Portuguese, but even that I wouldn't dare to hold a presentation in Portuguese. So I got maybe 60-70% of what Karen and Anna said, but that's not sufficient for talking about about the topic and the way we think about the topic at the Hertie School and why this might be interesting for you. So my name is Kai. I'm a professor of public administration and public policy at the Hertie School. I'm one of the more experienced hands at the school. I joined already in 2007, so I saw it grow, and we think it will further grow. At the moment, we have like 35 professors, and depending on how you count, 700, 800 students in our four master programs, and we aim maybe for 1,000 students in a couple of years. And I will go into this, I think, a little bit more details in the programs. But as you know, we are in the center of Berlin. We open a campus in, let's say, 1 or 2 years or 1.5 years, but we'll remain in the center of Berlin and maybe even move closer to the political center and into a historical building. What I tried to prepare for you, not knowing your backgrounds and your specific interests, is a kind of a quite general teaser about, let's say, thinking about public policy. And by this, I also mean thinking about what learning about public policy in a program or one of the programs that we offer could mean. So this is why we titled it Why Public Policy Matters. And after a few more introductory words, I have kind of 4 very short arguments or parts of the presentation. If you want to interrupt me, please do so. It helps me to get a feel for you and how you can resonate with what I say. So Anna is operating the slide. So when I say next slide, please, this is for Anna because she's operating the slide. So Anna, maybe you move to the next one now. So first of all, let's get off the table what the word or the 2 words public policy means. I think a neat, that's not a definition, but kind of almost a mantra, is a quite old one from the 1970s from Thomas Dye called What Governments Do, Why They Do It, and What Difference It Makes. And what distinguishes the study of public policy from, let's say, political science, general political science course, is what difference it makes. Because this, what difference it makes, refers to the issue, question, concern that is related to public problem solving public problems. So what the field of public policy asks is, okay, we have a kind of infinitive number of potential problems that should be addressed by governments, by government policies. Which ones are receiving this attention? How are they addressed? And does it make any difference? Does it make any difference to the real world in terms of what policies are being adopted, implemented, etc.? We can disentangle that a little bit more, and that's the next slide. There's already a question. Anna, how should we do that with a question? Would you read them out in English when they're in Spanish in the chat, or how should we do that? What do you think?
When they have questions for you?
Yeah. So that was just you writing. If you have a question, you can put it.
Yes. If they had,
Now I
because
got it.
they cannot open their microphone. So I was just saying that they can
That's
type it, and I can let you know if there's a question for them.
It would be better if they could open the microphone, but yeah, at least in the chat. And at some point, you could maybe at the end of the presentation or the event, you could open your camera as well, if that is possible. So when we talk about when you come to Hertie, what you learn first is an ABC of public policy. You learn concepts, words, ways of looking at public policy, definitions, and this kind of language and analytical perspective provides a network that connects you with the people at the school, the professors, the non-professorial researchers, the fellow students, the first years, the second years, that allows you to engage with them using that language, no matter what the specific topic is, if it's climate change, urban policy, international policy. So we have a common language that helps us to engage among each other with diverse topics and have not the same, but related analytical takes, ways of thinking about these issues. Related but not the same is important because we are interdisciplinary. So I'm a political scientist, but we have economists, lawyers, now physicists, computer scientists, sociologists, business administration people, and so on and so forth. But also they, of course, know the language, and this is what connects us. Here you have a couple of definitions written down, more to kind of leveling us here. So I don't want to go into too much detail here, but this is the understanding of public policy. We mean really what governments do in order to address a particular recognized problem, like air pollution in cities. Yeah, we kind of ban cars on Sunday, or we have more cycling lanes, or we have a taxation on fuels, or we subsidize cycling. So that would be different measures to address that problem. Could also be a policy to not do anything. We call that non-decisions. And good example of non-decisions was during the COVID time that vaccination was not made mandatory, at least in most countries I know of. So these are public policies, and the policy making process is kind of the ideal typical cycle of the stages through which a good policy goes through, from agenda setting to policy formulation, decision making, implementation, evaluating, learning from this, and starting anew from that. Policy making puts government in an important role, but the first slide here was the University of Governance, and governance means not less than, okay, if we want to address public problems today, we cannot limit our view to governments, private sector, NGO, international organizations, citizens, like even individuals now think of Elon Musk play a role, and we have to take them into account. Policymaking is not an academic exercise, it's a power play at the same time. And the power play is on the big superstructure of what we all can see in the media with the top politicians, and in the engine room where experts, bureaucrats work together or against each other. So we have macro and micro politics, and the rules of the games are set by national, regional, and international institutions. So Colombia works different than the European Union for obvious reasons, or Germany or Berlin works different than Bavaria for that matter, because there are, you might also say, constitutional differences. Having on the table of what public policy is, let's go a little bit into, the rationale, why having an interdisciplinary field that deals not with the full disciplines, but with the public policy aspects of them. What were the promises when this field was created, and where do we stand now? So let's go to the next slide. Anna, you have your hand up. Is that on purpose?
There's a question in the chat. They say, "Dear Professor, how has technological advancement boosted the scope of public policy in Europe as opposed to the Western world? And do you think public policy today can be more effective in complying with its objectives of mitigating public problems?"
What the scope of what? What was the first thing you said? The scope of?
Of public policy in Europe as opposed to Western world.
Not sure if I fully get the question. I think it's a super interesting question. Would you hold it for a bit, because I think I'm speaking to that as we go along, and it's a hard one to answer. But I have a couple of things to say. Basically, why problem solving is more difficult today than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago, actually, but we are getting to that. So in that case, again, please do interrupt me, but also for this one, please hold it a little bit. So the first thing is obvious. Yeah, why public policy matters. The first thing is really obvious. It's problems, and wicked problems. Yeah, I don't know if you know is it a film or some wicked games, but wicked means more than complicated. Yeah. So what is different today when we talk about policy problems than it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago, when things were also not easy? First, it's simply the scale and impact of policy problems. They are not locally limited anymore. They are not always global, but they are definitely transboundary. And we see that with big policy problems like climate change, also big temporary problems like pandemic diseases, or seemingly minor issues like the invasion of alien species, like insects or plants into different regions, but also the very local problems that we have in rural areas, which are affected by wider and larger developments. So scale and impact, it's simply problems are bigger these days. And if we don't solve them, we are in bigger trouble than we used. Second, complexity. Complexity means is different than complicated. Complicated is, you know, this laptop here into which I'm speaking is for me complicated. If I open it, I see a lot of things and I don't understand them. If someone is trained in that, for this person, it's not really complicated. This person will understand. But for me, it's complicated. But it's not necessarily complex. Complex means that there are many different entities, and they have a degree of autonomy to do things as they wish, but their decisions have an impact on each other. So you can see that immediately now with what Trump does in all his kinds of rush of decisions on trade policy, on migration policy, on climate policy that has a knock-on effect on all kinds of other economic policies in all kinds of other countries. And we see that in all areas. So basically, if you intervene here, something somewhere else will happen, and that is all the time. And that makes the job of policy analysis very difficult, because in the past we looked at individual policies and tried to optimize them, so to say. And well, we can continue to do that, but it's becoming more limited when the degree of interconnectedness grows. Third is contention. There is a word in the literature, it's called a valence issue. A valence issue is an issue where people agree that something needs to be done. They might disagree on the right way to achieve goals to improve the problem, but they agree on that something needs to be done. So climate change was a valence issue. It's now an issue of identity politics. Yeah, I'm against climate policy because I don't like the Greens who are pushing for that with their cargo bikes and such like. So it becomes a matter of taking a personal stance against, actually in Germany also against climate change, when it was 15 years ago a complete valence issue. And the fourth dimension that makes our problems more wicked these days than they used to be, I think, is time. Many policy decisions have major implications for the future, and politicians are under a lot of pressure to do something in the short term. Not only because they have to win elections, but also they have to distribute benefits to their constituents, to their supporters. They have to respond to media pressure, and so on and so forth. So that's the obvious answer to the question why public policy matters. Yeah, because we are not in a world where we are lacking policy problems and they become more challenging to address. Next slide, please. A few words on the field of public policy. If that would be an interactive class, I would now ask, when do you think public policy analysis started? And maybe one or two smart guys among you would say, well, in Greek, there was the Oracle of Delphi, and it was a kind of a mystic policy advisor. Yeah, maybe someone would say late 19th century. And then at some point, someone would say, yeah, after World War II. And then I would say, yes, why? Yeah, where does the word think tank come from? Isn't think tank a strange word for kind of an intellectual activity? Tanker, that's kind of a war machine, basically. And the reason why the word think tank became prominent is because the US armed forces, they deployed quantitative operations researchers in the planning of military campaigns against Nazi Germany. And these practices were continued after World War II. So Brookings, which is one of the big, historically most important think tanks in the US, was created under a different name before World War II, and then came the RAND Corporation. RAND stands for Research and Development, which was an outgrowth of the Air Force, the US Air Force actually, and developed game theory and other models to understand foreign policy, and moved then into domestic policy in the 60s in the US. Also around the 1960s, the first really powerful move to introduce analytical tools that were at that time also discussed under the name of policy analysis moved into government. So PhD researchers or graduates were hired, all these quantitative researchers, to introduce rational planning, quantitative analysis into government. First US, then other Western countries, and then this was sold through international organizations to all kinds of mid-income and developing countries. And the main thrust of the intellectual project was, if you wish, knowledge ammunition for policy. Yeah, so give us information about what works. Give us information about the problem. And we need a science, a field that develops targeted, packaged information that can be used in the policy process. So the first 10, 15, 20 years of public policy was dominated by economists, operations researchers, and a kind of almost engineering-like understanding of what public policy needs to be good and functioning, namely the best information possible. But many of the reforms in the US and elsewhere, they turned out to be not effective. There's a, I think, cool book out, I think published in the mid-1970s. It's called The Moon and the Ghetto. And the question asked by the book was, why did we manage to launch a rocket to the moon and have people walking on the moon, but we cannot solve the problem of the ghetto? Yeah, and you know what the answer to that question is? Going back to the 4 dimensions of wicked problems, it's, yeah, launching a rocket and having people on the moon is really complicated. It's super complicated. It requires science and a project and money. It's not as complex as dealing with the ghetto in a city, where you have autonomous actors and they interact, and it's very complicated societal, economic issues to address here. So when the many reforms introduced in the US and elsewhere, one could say failed, at least in the short term, people were asking, how comes we have invested so much money and knowledge into policy and have, smart kids, whiz kids, they were called, in government? Now, why isn't that working? So people start looking at the implementation process and saw, well, what's been decided somewhere in Washington often is implemented way differently on the ground. And implementation research was the first step to look systematically into the process of making and implementing public policy. And this is when political science and public administration became more important. And the question was asked, under which political, administrative, and also societal conditions good policy making can happen? And this is where the second boom of policy schools, the first boom was in the 1960s, the second was in the 1990s, 2000s, and Hertie is part of that. Now we have a third boom, which is in particular in the what we call the Middle East, or sometimes called West Asia, where you have a boom of new policy schools as well, focusing on the interaction between people, individuals, organizations, making policy and fighting about what is good and not so good policy. Next slide, please. And then we saw maybe since, I would say, let's say since the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009, we see a accumulation of change in the context of public policy that really questions fundamentally what we do in policy schools and in the real world of policy making. It's just catchwords here, and all of the catchwords merit full courses. So and you know them all. Technology is kind of the speed of development is always accelerating, and we don't know what AI will be capable of doing in half a year. We just had a faculty session how we use AI in research, but also in teaching, and we found out all of us use it in research, but not all of us use it in teaching. I do encourage students to use AI in a considerate way. Let's see how that works in half a year. So technology is a key driver of change, as is geopolitics. And it's connected again. That's the complexity. I'm sure you have read and heard about the new AI model that has been pushed by China, which is accused of pushing pro-China narratives. Right? So geopolitics and technological development is intermingled. Why is Trump not shutting down TikTok despite the court decision now? Yeah, maybe it has something to do with Elon Musk and his investment interest in China. So again, this interconnectedness. We have something that, the next 2 points maybe belong together as this attention economy. Here we have an election campaign in Germany, and it's so much driven by the attention economy and diverting from other important issues that we focus on only, like in the US, only migration is basically the only topic that has been discussed. And it's really sad. And you might say this is a development of truth decay, where Hannah Arendt said that, liars, they don't want us to believe in the lie. They want us to believe in nothing anymore, so that we cannot have trust in anything anymore. And we are close to that situation. And both of these developments feed polarization, the rise of the extreme right, at least in Europe, and democratic backsliding in a number of countries, leading to really declining trust in government across the board. There is a pair of words from an American sociologist talking about goal attainment and system maintenance. And public policy analysis was always about goal attainment, how to achieve the best possible clean air policy in the city of Berlin. And these days, we cannot only think about this question alone, we also have to think about not just political feasibility of some measures, but can we assume that this policy is not undermining the functioning of the system so that we can address other problems in the future, system maintenance. And all these points that I've been mentioned are issues, points that undermine the systems, undermine the political, administrative, societal system to address public policy problems. And policy analysis, the first project, has ignored these questions widely. It didn't need to really care about this, but now system maintenance is the problem. And while in the past we could say politicians were held accountable for solving problems or moving into that direction, there's something like a political gain today to be gained from doing the opposite than problem solving. And this is a fundamental question for us studying and teaching public policy. It's really challenging, troubling, and puts our project into question. So how do we deal with that? Next, and I think my final slide, actually, Anna. So you read the 3 bullets here: better methods, better management, better politics. So these are the 3 answers that we give in our teaching and thinking to this. So basically, the answer is a division of labor. Not collectively, we want to address what I tried to outline as the new challenges, but not every one of us can address all these questions. So some of us, growing number of us in the faculty, deal with methods. So if you think for your own professional development, you really need to be up to speed with coding, quantitative analysis, data visualization, data analysis. You get that here, and you will be, I think, Anna, you have done the quantitative track, I think, or even the data science. I'm not sure if I remember correctly here. So, but if you choose data science for public policy, this is technical stuff. Yeah, it's not structural engineering, but it's different than the normal policy analysis class. And you will learn Python and natural language processing, the modeling. There are math courses there, which we had the evaluations in our faculty retreat today, which get amazing evaluations. So the professors must be really good. So better methods, also for producing better evidence that informs policymaking. The other answer is better management. So digitization, for example, how to do digitization, right? One of our colleagues, Gerhard Hammerschmidt, is doing that as his day and I think night job as well. Yeah, so you can specialize in more kind of how to organize the machine room of government and also NGOs in these days. And the third one is better politics, and this is of course not a cookbook recipe type of approach. We can also not solve real world problems. We can debate them and we can analyze them. And more of us in our courses go into the issues of democracy, democratic backsliding. What does it take for political administrative systems to stay stable? How are conflicts undermining our capacity to address problems? How can we solve problems? And I think the field of public policy will have a reckoning. I don't know if that is a good English word. I'm not a native speaker, but these developments will have a lasting impact of how we think about public policy. And these 3 bullets are separate now, but how we arrange them and how we combine them is our task, and we think about that. And as I mentioned, the faculty retreat a couple of times already. Currently, we think about how we develop our teaching and our programs to incorporate these new developments. In a way, when you come here, you can do any of this or any combination of this. I think, but that's my personal opinion, we need more of better politics, and I'm advocating for this, and some more better management. Oh, of course, others think better methods is the main solutions, and you can get that as well. I stop here. I think I'm more or less on time, and I hope this little bit of general comments made sense to you. But if you have questions, please don't be shy. Type them, shout them, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Yes, we have. So we had the initial question that I had already mentioned, and we had 2 more questions. One of them from the same student asking, from your experience, what are the main difficulties you have observed in your students learning to design and evaluate public policies? And the second question is, to what extent could Colombia become embroiled in an economic crisis due to the complexity of its governmental policies vis-a-vis the policies of the new US government?
Yeah, so I have an easier time to answer the first question than the second one because I'm not an expert in the region. But when I think about the second problem, the second question, yeah, the economic rebound effects of what the Trump administration will do are uncertain, but not positive, right? But you know, it's also a call for action for everyone to think and act on what can be done. And everyone, I mean everyone individually and every country. So we can go along with what Trump and I have to say Musk does, which is a policy of, antique Rome, divide and rule. Yeah, so dividing larger entities like the European Union and make deals with individual countries. Italy, Hungary are friendly countries, and then rule. And it's quite obvious that Musk wants to weaken Europe for economic purposes because it's a strong regulator. And when you think about Latin America, can the development be a trigger for closer collaboration across these countries, and maybe also a closer collaboration with Europe or other regions? Will that lead to Latin America going more what's already happening into the, let's say, Chinese direction, which has a lot of interest in the regions? Or will the Mercosur deal be sealed and maybe developed in light of the Trump administration's policies? Mercosur receives a lot of criticism here as well for environmental and other standards. I'm a bit more optimistic or positive in that, because it could be kind of an anchor point for closer collaboration and presenting a strong response to really something very problematic that is coming from the US. So design and evaluating public policies and the challenges of learning here. Yeah, there are two ways to learn design and evaluating public policies. One is the technical, and the other one is the political. The technical is, if you design public policy, the technical response, how to best do is do a randomized controlled trial where you test two different options and randomize the allocation of individuals or other units into at least two groups, one treatment, one control group, and then you get the gold standard about what worked. But you can do that only for a couple of things. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes particular type of policies where you can do that. There are a number of policies where they don't allow themselves to be packaged into different groups. And you can learn these technicalities. Then you have to do the stats foundations for this. You have to go into the design of experimental policy. We all offer that, and that gives you good chances on the job market in these areas. Yeah, think of the Poverty Action Lab, all these kind of evaluators. Yeah, or you think about the political dimension of that, because the word evaluation is interesting. Yeah, because it includes value. Yeah, and that means that a judgment has been issued, has been done, has been put on a policy. Someone is judging the policy. And the interesting thing about policy evaluation is, no matter how good an evaluation study is, it will not close down a policy controversy, because a policy controversy comes from different stakeholders having different evaluation criteria. Yeah? So some people will evaluate urban transport policies as a climate policy. Other will evaluate it as a policy of equity and fairness. Some others will evaluate from an electoral point of view. Again, others will see that as a freedom issue, and results of the judgment will be driven by the different perspectives of stakeholders. And what we try to do is to offer both perspectives, because we kind of want to avoid just the technocratic education of techniques without political sensitivity. And with political sensitivity, I don't mean party politics, but I just mean the value dimension of policy making. Because policy making, I gave you the innocent definition early on, but it's also the allocation of values. Who gets something and who pays for that, right? Do we have more questions?
There's one more, but if you don't mind, I'll go through my portion and then we can get to it, because it's kind of like about applying what's learned at Hertie into like different contexts of the world. So, yeah, I'm gonna switch to Spanish. I hope that's okay. Y Lina, pues no te preocupes, en un ratito te vamos a responder tu pregunta también, pero quiero asegurarme que tengamos tiempo de pues hablar sobre Hertie en líneas un poquito más generalizadas. Bueno, comenzando por presentar la universidad en sí. Somos una escuela, bueno, como ya vieron un poquito con el teaser del profesor Kai, que es bastante interdisciplinaria, internacional e intersectoral, ubicada en el centro de Berlín. Somos una institución non-profit sin fines de lucro, somos parte de la Hertie Stiftung, más sin embargo somos una escuela privada fundada en el año 2003, inicialmente con nuestra maestría en políticas públicas, que inició en el año 2005, a la cual le siguió una maestría ejecutiva en administración pública en el 2008 y luego una maestría en administración pública en el 2015 y la más nueva siendo la maestría en ciencia de datos que comenzó en el 2020. Un poquito para que conozcan como las dimensiones de la universidad, tenemos, como mencionaba el profesor, alrededor de 836 estudiantes que vienen de más de 70 países del mundo. En nuestros programas ejecutivos, además de estos pues, estudiantes, participan más de 1.000 estudiantes o participantes cada año. Y bueno, alrededor del mundo tenemos ya más de 3.000 egresados. ¿Qué se puede estudiar en nuestra universidad? Como les mencionaba, pues son cuatro principales programas, entre ellos la maestría de políticas públicas, dentro de la cual el profesor Kai es uno de los pues, pilares fundamentales de esta maestría, de la cual yo también soy egresada. También tenemos la oferta de la maestría en administración en asuntos internacionales, la de ciencia de datos para políticas públicas, la cual ha tenido pues bastante auge y bastante acogida en los últimos años, y la opción de maestría ejecutiva que viene a ser para aquellos que ya pues han estado vinculados profesionalmente por cierta cantidad de años previos a cursar esta maestría. Todas ellas son de 2 años, son dictadas completamente en inglés, por lo cual hablar alemán no viene a ser una barrera para ustedes venir a estudiar aquí en Alemania en la Hertie School. Y bueno, la ejecutiva sí se puede llevar a cabo en dos modalidades. Si se lleva a cabo en una modalidad full time, se puede hacer en un año. Y si se hace part-time es de 2 a 4 años. Quería enfocarme hoy en cómo aplicar a la universidad, ya que ahorita pues todavía estamos en el proceso sí, de admitir estudiantes hasta el 1 de mayo. Los requisitos para aplicar a la institución son que tengas una hoja de vida actualizada. Tienes que también enviar una carta de motivación en la cual pues nos cuentes un poco por qué quieres venir a Hertie y por qué quieres estudiar alguna de estas maestrías, cuáles son tus intereses profesionales al escoger, digamos, este tipo de programa. También necesitamos, por supuesto, copias de tus notas, de tus estudios previos. Y, por supuesto, al ser nuestros programas dictados en inglés, necesitamos tus certificados de idioma inglés. Aquí en esta diapositiva pueden ver también cuáles son los requisitos para estos diferentes exámenes que aceptamos. En cuanto al precio de la matrícula y las fechas límite, actualmente el precio de la matrícula es de 18.750 euros por año, lo cual pues en total son 37.500 euros para sí, el total de los 2 años de la maestría. Tenemos varias fechas límites. La primera de ellas pues fue el 1 de diciembre, la cual es nuestro Early Bird Deadline y les garantiza un descuento de 2.000 euros dentro del valor total de la matrícula. La siguiente de ellas fue el 15 de enero para todos aquellos que requerían visa para venir a estudiar acá, pero el proceso sigue abierto hasta el 1 de mayo, así que si ustedes están interesados en pues, comenzar sus estudios de maestría este año en septiembre, aún pueden hacerlo. Además de eso, pues contamos con varias opciones de financiación, tanto internas como externas. Internas tenemos becas del 100% que cubren diferentes temas de acuerdo a las áreas de interés que deseen desarrollar a través de sus maestrías. Tenemos también becas parciales que cubren del 10 al 50% del valor total de la matrícula. Y tenemos, pues, por supuesto, colaboradores externos que también ayudan a financiar los estudios. Para aplicar a las becas de Hertie, tendrían que primero, por favor, aplicar directamente a las maestrías en sí, a las que estén interesadas. Y una vez admitidos a la institución, se les da acceso al formato de aplicación para las becas. Dentro de nuestros, por supuesto, aliados de financiación externa, queríamos profundizar en nuestro convenio con Colfuturo, a través del cual, como mencionaba Karen también al inicio de la sesión, tenemos una opción de una beca del 100% que cubre el valor total de la matrícula. Y tenemos varias opciones de becas parciales que van del 50 al 25% del valor total de la matrícula. Para tener beneficio de este convenio, tienen que aplicar a nuestras maestrías, ser admitidos y también, por supuesto, aplicar a Colfuturo a través pues, de sus fechas de aplicación, que todavía entiendo que están abiertas. Y bueno, si son seleccionados por Colfuturo y admitidos a nuestra institución, nosotros hacemos la evaluación de quienes pues reciben cuál beca del convenio. Luego de eso quería como dejarles como unas pequeñas razones principales de por qué pues venir a Hertie, porque escoger a Hertie para hacer sus estudios de maestría en estas áreas de políticas públicas, gobernanza, asuntos internacionales, entre otros. La primera de ellas siendo pues el tamaño de nuestra institución y de nuestros classrooms en sí, es porque pues esto les permite tener un aprendizaje mucho más directo del profesor y de sus compañeros, ya que nosotros tenemos un límite en la capacidad de clases, el cual es de 24 alumnos, por lo cual tenemos como en promedio 21 estudiantes en cada salón, no más que eso. El segundo viene a ser, por supuesto, lo internacional de estos programas, y eso creo que va también hacia la pregunta que hacía Lina en cuanto a cómo utilizar el aprendizaje en diferentes contextos. Pues tenemos un cuerpo estudiantil bastante internacional. Aquí pueden ver un poco como la distribución, pero como les mencionaba, vienen de más de 70 países, así que pues van a aprender muchísimo también de muchos contextos externos. También nuestros profesores vienen de muchos países y pues esto suma muchísimo a su aprendizaje, sobre todo en estos temas. Lo siguiente sería que hay mucho acompañamiento, digamos, para el ámbito profesional de sus carreras a través de muchos programas de mentoría que ofrece la institución, como también workshops y muchas opciones de coaching que lleva a cabo el equipo de Career Development, como también pues es parte de nuestro currículo el que hagan prácticas profesionales entre el primero y segundo año de la maestría, y tenemos esta opción del Professional Year que les permite pues extender, digamos, estas prácticas en vez de que sean de un par de meses a que sea un año completo de práctica profesional. También pues mencionar el posicionamiento de la universidad en sí entre otros competidores que también pues ofrecen programas similares. Hertie se encuentra entre las mejores universidades de políticas públicas del mundo y competimos y tenemos como aliados, perdón, muchas otras de estas universidades, como viene a ser la Universidad de Syracuse, la Universidad Bocconi, London School of Economics, entre otros, lo cual les brinda a ustedes acceso tanto a programas de doble titulación como a intercambios académicos de pues un semestre. Y por último, pues el atractivo de la ciudad en sí, Berlín como capital de Alemania, siendo una ciudad muy activa en la cual hay muchísimas organizaciones internacionales, muchos think tanks, muchos startups desarrollándose en diferentes ámbitos que pues también les permiten a ustedes ingresar, digamos, a este network, sí, tanto de la ciudad como pues internacional a través de los grupos de egresados. A través de esta diapositiva y de este QR se pueden registrar a nuestra newsletter para también mantenerse al día con nuestros eventos, con deadlines y con información importante que nos gusta compartir con ustedes. Y sí, por último, pues aquí tienen también mi email, también lo voy a escribir aquí en el chat por si pues hay alguna pregunta que quede sin responder luego de la sesión de hoy o cualquier duda que pueda surgir en las próximas semanas.
Perfecto, bueno. Kai, thank you so much for all the valuable information you share with us today in this masterclass, totally relevant to the current international context. Y Ana, por tu lado, como siempre, también te agradezco muchísimo por el tiempo, la disposición, por la claridad en la información que nos brindas sobre Hertie. Siempre muy valioso contar con tu participación en estos espacios. Entonces, tenemos por aquí algunas preguntas para ustedes dos. Para Ana sería esta. Nos dicen, ¿podrías hablar un poco, por favor, sobre el doble programa con Duke?
Sí, el programa de doble titulación con Duke es solamente para nuestra maestría de ciencia de datos Y básicamente esta doble titulación, la manera en que funciona es que se completa un año en cada institución, lo cual le permite al estudiante egresar pues con títulos de ambas universidades, o sea, tendrían como una maestría, un título de maestría de ciencia de datos de Hertie como de Duke University. Lo importante a tener en cuenta en cuanto a estos programas de doble titulación es el tema de matrícula, ya que la matrícula sí cambia, puesto que durante el año que el estudiante está en Hertie, pues se paga la matrícula de Hertie y el año que el estudiante está en Duke se paga la matrícula de Duke. Y también, pues, si por ejemplo reciben algún tipo de financiación o de beca por parte de Hertie, esta no se transmite también a la otra universidad. Por ende, si por ejemplo forman parte del convenio con Colfuturo y se ganan, no sé, una beca parcial del 50%, este 50% solo aplicaría al año en Hertie.
Perfecto. Bueno, por aquí Luis nos dice, yo ya apliqué a Hertie. ¿Cuándo podría aplicar para las becas que ofrece la universidad?
Una vez admitido a la universidad, se abre sí, el portal para poder aplicar a la financiación de la universidad y tienen 2 semanas para gestionar ese formulario. Es bastante sencillo, es nada más como preguntando pues a cuáles becas desean postular, bien sea a las del 100% o a las parciales. Y les pide como algunas informaciones como para conocer un poco el background, digamos, económico del estudiante y poder pues hacer un buen assessment del estudiante y hacerle la oferta.
Perfecto. Lina nos pide si puedes hablar un poco sobre también la doble titulación o cursos semestrales en SciencePo.
Sí, con SciencePo tenemos también un programa de doble titulación en el cual el primer año se lleva a cabo en París y el segundo año aquí en Berlín con nosotros. Con ellos no estoy segura, tendría que revisar si también tenemos el exchange, que sería pues durante el tercer semestre de estudio en Hertie. Pero lo mismo que con Duke, también tener en cuenta el tema de las matrículas, que pues son distintas en cada institución. El Dual Degree con Sciencespo es bastante competitivo también, entonces pues sí tener en cuenta que la aplicación se lleva a cabo con Sciencespo directamente y pues ellos nos transmiten a nosotros si el estudiante está interesado en participar del programa de doble titulación.
Perfecto. Bueno, Lina también nos dice, en caso de ser negada la beca full en alguno de los temas, sostenibilidad, ¿se puede presentar luego a otra? Por ejemplo, datos.
Lamentablemente no solamente aceptamos una aplicación a beca de 100% digamos, por periodo. Ya tendrían que esperar al año siguiente para volver a aplicar.
Pero bien, entonces. Bueno, también nos pide Jorge si tú podrías de pronto hablarnos algo en términos generales sobre doctorado, algo que se tenga que tener en cuenta para esto.
Lamentablemente el área de doctorados en la universidad se maneja completamente aparte de la parte de maestrías. Lo que les podría decir es que son bien pocas plazas, es bastante competitivo. Lo importante es que revisen los profesores y los temas de los profesores de doctorado. Esto a través de nuestra página web lo pueden conseguir y pues tratar de identificar cuál sería como el área y el profesor con quien desearían desarrollar sus trabajos de doctorado y pues aplicar. Ya yo creo que por este año la ventana de aplicación ha cerrado, pero pues sí, es todo lo que les podría decir al respecto.
Listo. Juliana nos pregunta, ¿se puede realizar un intercambio y el año profesional durante el programa o son excluyentes?
No son excluyentes, se pueden combinar, también se puede hacer Professional Year y Dual Degree, esto no implica ningún tipo de problema. Aquí en el chat les puse también el link para el apartado de nuestra página web de los Dual Degrees, como habían varias preguntas sobre eso, pues allí pueden obtener más información específica sobre esos dos programas.
Súper bien. Y por aquí Liliana nos dice, si no me aceptan para la beca del 100%, ¿podría después aplicar a una beca parcial?
Dentro del formato de aplicación a becas de Hertie, pueden en la misma aplicación aplicar ambas cosas. Entonces, la primera pregunta que les aparece allí es si quieren ser considerados solamente para las becas completas o si quieren ser considerados para ambas o solo para las parciales, porque a veces también, dependiendo de sus perfiles, digamos que su perfil no se ajusta a ninguno de los temas de las becas del 100%, en ese caso pueden solo postular a las parciales. eso lo pueden hacer allí y dependiendo de eso, pues el formato es dinámico, entonces les va a hacer como que algunas partes sean requisito y otras no.
Bueno, ya cerrando un poco esta sesión de preguntas, porque se nos acabó el tiempo infortunadamente, nos dicen, ¿podrías explicarnos un poco más sobre el Master en International Affairs? ¿Cuánto es necesario tener de experiencia para poder aplicar?
Pues nuestros estudiantes son bastante mixtos en temas de cuánta experiencia previa tienen. Tenemos tanto estudiantes que vienen recién graduados de pregrado como algunos de ellos que tienen más experiencia laboral. Todos están perfectamente invitados a aplicar y a ser parte del programa, ya que pues al principio siempre hay varias clases como para intentar nivelar, digamos, a todos los estudiantes y que todos pues te puedan seguir avanzando exitosamente a través del programa.
Perfecto. Ok. Bueno, ¿hay límite de edad para realizar alguna de las maestrías de Hertie?
No hay límites de edad.
Listo. Y nos dice Sebastián, si no aplicamos antes del 15 de enero y necesitaríamos visa para estudiar, ¿todavía sería factible aplicar?
Sí, todavía pueden aplicar. La fecha del 15 de enero era más que todo para las becas del 100%. Lamentablemente luego de esta fecha ya es mucho más difícil acceder a esas becas del 100%. Sin embargo, como tenemos la beca del 100% con el convenio de Colfuturo, y si ustedes son exitosos en sus aplicaciones de Colfuturo, también todavía podrían ser considerados para esa beca de 100%, pero como les mencionaba, hasta el 1 de mayo sigue abierto el plazo para aplicar a las maestrías. Siempre pues intentamos motivarlos a aplicar lo antes posible, precisamente por estos tiempos de los procesos de visado, pero sigue estando abierta la posibilidad.
Perfecto. Y nos dicen, ¿nos podrías dar algún tip para la búsqueda de vivienda en Berlín? ¿O algún enlace donde ellos puedan encontrarlo?
Sí, les puedo compartir aquí en el chat, en nuestra página web hay una parte específicamente sobre esta información que comparte algunos, pues, algunas páginas web donde pueden ayudarse a buscar y también pues algunos tips. Allí lo acabo de compartir en el chat.
Perfecto. Y bueno, ya para ir cerrando definitivamente, Professor Kai, I don't know if you want maybe some final advice to our interested students in Colombia that want to study topics related with public policy in Germany.
I don't know, maybe not advice, but we had a fair share of students from Latin America and in particular Colombia. Many of them ended up in very interesting government position and also in NGO in very different fields. And it's always that students from Colombia bring very interesting perspectives, experiences, and ways of looking at things to our classroom and to the community. So I'm just looking forward to welcome as many of you as possible. In particular, in my area, urban policy, Colombian students have a lot to share in terms of what happened in Colombian cities, in particular since the late 1990s, early 20s, in cities like Medellin and others, and Bogota. So I'm just looking forward to welcome as many of you as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, again, Anna and Kai, thank you so much for this incredible participation. I hope we continue to have many more space to share valuable information about Hertie and all the opportunities and offer experience that you can offer to all of us. Thank you so much and hope to see you in the next opportunity.
Thank you.
Gracias.
A todos nuestros asistentes, también mil gracias por su interés y participación en estos espacios. Los esperamos siendo partícipes de muchos más de nuestros eventos y webinars informativos. Hasta pronto. Gracias, Ana. Bye, Kai. Thank you so much.
Gracias. Chao.
Estén muy bien.